now. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
I've been rocking it.
Oh yeah, crack out the CB, man. Get on Channel 7, the Super Bowl channel, man. It's ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, hey, actually, Johnson, one of the guys that I normally hunt on POTA, it's a KJ6ER. He and his partner, they did 10 meters FM, and we're rocking it across the state. So that was kind of exciting to see that. And the great part about FM is like you either got them or you don't. So you're gonna be 5'9" plus or 5'9" nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool.
All right, so I think we are streaming. If not, I'm also going to start recording right now. So let's kind of talk topic by topic. Whoever proposes the first topic will beat that horse up. But the idea is you're 1 to 4 weeks out from a competition. What kind of preparations are really important. And in our last series, we hit the high points, which is planning ConOps, planning your manning, just the initial 60-day out. We talked frequencies and we talked training. So those are the big things that we hit for 60 days out. And now it's into, say, 30 days to 7 days out from a competition. So whoever's got a topic, go ahead and throw it out there.
Definitely site survey.
All right, site survey. I think there's a lot of subtopics of site survey. Let's try and hit those up.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to know where you're going to be at, but also how it's going to do weather-wise. I mean, if you're 7 days out, you could look at that forecast and see if you're going to be throwing antennas up in the rain and the thunder, what it's going to look like in terms of what gear you should be bringing and how you're going to be setting it up in the conditions.
All right, so we'll talk. Anyone have anything more on weather? I think that's a good thing. Are you rainproofing yourself? Can you withstand the conditions for an extended period of time? Anyone else got something on that? Is it hot? Nothing. All right, go on to the next one.
Well, ultimately, like the antenna setup and knowing if you got the space and all that. But I mean, if we want to directionalize a few things, knowing some of those like guaranteed close in range NIVAS type stations that you want to get hit, you got an antenna for that. Or if you have the land for more, then by all means, find more of an azimuth general direction. I remember last time we kind of sectioned off different pies of the earth when we were planning out our antenna setup, and it would actually work out pretty good for us, right, Rob?
Yeah. So I just wrote that down. So I also want to provide links with this, but a good thing that we had was the azimuth map. I'm trying to look up the call and remember it. Cody, I sent it to you the other day. Wasson, I think it was N6 Sierra Tango. But knowing your azimuths, because for some reason in my brain I thought, Washington is to my west from New York, so I just shoot 270 and I'm on target. But in actuality, 270 hit us to Huachuca. So my azimuth was off to try and do that. So we had to set up different antennas, but having that azimuth map definitely helped with the planning. And then so azimuth map, space. I think space is a big one, and not just eyeballing it, maybe actually setting it up or laying it out, and because you don't want your ends buttoned up against to it, kind of want some free hanging. And then wherever that center hangs, you're going to need coax to get there. So I'll put coax distances and testing.
I'm going to throw something in while you're talking about coax if you got a free minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there was a good conversation about different types of coax about an hour ago in the chat. For those of you that missed it, Army Communicator for February is out. And JCSC threw an article in there for the military HF competitions. It's pages 12 and 13. But for QRPX specifically, we noted two things. You want to minimize your losses and maximize gain. So when you're talking about coax, when you're talking about antennas, those are the two things you really want to focus on, especially with the 20-watt limit.
Yeah, and it definitely comes down to those numbers, man. Sometimes it's negligible loss, especially if you do. I think it's two different conversations when you do POTA, where everyone has a website that they know where you're at and they try and hunt you with their mega beam and 1.5K. It's different when it's just a bunch of knuckleheads all across the country trying to figure out HF on 20 watts. So yeah, like that's a really good idea. In fact, if you want to get on that series with us, Jared, and talk about the Army communicator, and we'll put that up. I'm gonna tie that into that.
Yeah, I gotta read that up.
Yeah.
Liking it.
It'd be a
'Cause,
great topic.
Generally, we all have, RG213, the standard, mil 17 coax. But I mean, if there are other options out there, then keeping them short to the point where you need to, yeah, totally, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, RG213 is usually fine. You got to watch a couple of things. Usually the age. So if it's older than 10 years old, get into it. Take a look at the braid. Just make sure it's good, and then put a new end on when you're done, of course. Just you're not wearing 100 feet of RG58 out there and losing half your power. That's kind of what you want to look at.
Yeah, I know. When we did Noble Skywave, there was a few runs. We had 3 lengths of 80-foot RG213. Well, we were running 100 watts or 125 or whatever to get that max power out. But there is some loss even in RG213 at HF levels. I think we calculated it's like 0.6 dB per 100 foot, so we could have been losing a dB on reception. So yeah, that's a really good point, Jared. If you're willing to come back and talk to us about that article and stuff, I'd love to have you in there. Okay, weather. I got weather, antenna, coax, and a note I added on weather. I'm gonna look for a resource. Space weather has, like the conditions have been absolutely crazy lately. So I think space weather, ionospheric conditions. I don't know if anyone has a good resource besides that standard space weather map. And if it is just that standard space weather map, we might have to dive into just a few small things that soldiers can recognize to figure out conditions. And it might just be the sunspot number, the A and K index, and I don't really know what else. It can give you just like the quick band openings.
Those are great starting points. If you haven't used VOACAP Online yet, definitely use VOACAP Online. I think you saw the CONOP, but the CONOP we recently sent out for the March 2nd COMEX that we're doing. There's a map on there for the MUF, and it's centered on essentially Jacksonville, Florida. But what that tells you, based on the information from solarweather.com and feeding that into the model, is the frequency you'll be able to use at different times to talk to different places. And so if soldiers can follow that and essentially know that, hey, if I'm trying to talk to California from New York, and I'm trying to use 3 megahertz during the day, it's not going to work for anything. But at the same time, if I try to use, the sunspots are good right now, but let's say 30 megahertz during the day, based on information, it may or may not work. And so they could narrow down how they want to construct their antennas and what frequencies they want to be on at different times of the day using the VOACAP Online.
Yeah, and I think that's something really important that we need to make sure we keep in touch with is the more and more we do it, the more and more we know how to make the calls on the fly. Like we can wake up in the morning and just know what frequencies we're going to use just by reading the conditions, just listening to the radio. We can do it. But we have to think about like who's the new guy, the first competition. I don't know what the heck I'm looking for. I've been trying this guy on 3 megahertz for 5 hours now. And that's something we mentioned in the video. Hopefully I can get that out this week. Not wasting time on that. So yeah, those are all really good points. I wrote down that solarweather.com. I also had, I don't know if anyone here is running HamPy and remembers the software that I used last year for propagation, oh man, I gotta find that. There's say it again, Matt.
Pretty sure it's Ham Clock, where you can press somewhere on the map and it gives it to you.
Yep. Ham Clock on Raspberry Pi was like the coolest thing that I used, and it pulled its condition. I forget where it pulled its conditions from. Might have been VoaCap, but really cool GUI to really notice conditions. So I'll put that in there. We'll make sure we film some examples and shit like that. I actually just found that computer, that Pi, so I'll do that. Okay, weather, antennas, talking space. Cody, at that point, we'll do just like antennas and coax, and we'll talk. We'll do a small little piece on like testing. Your VisWAR using a prim. So when we do that point, we'll talk prims, and we'll talk your own antenna analyzers and kind of what numbers you're looking for when it comes to SWR. Okay, anyone got another topic to bring up?
I got one.
Let's go with Jake.
All right. Unit cooperation and collaboration for these events. So, say the more junior enlisted you are, the more trouble you may have to actually go get the time to go compete in this if you work in other stuff. So maybe how do we get around that? Do we work a memorandum for record that the commander signed that, hey, this person's going out to go work on this event and compete in this during that day? Or how are we going to bring anyone else involved to watch the competition, get involved with the competition around us as we're getting involved in it? So pretty much discussion on how we go during that route, especially for someone myself. I've never done one of these competitions, and I'm going into a unit that I have no idea how they're going to react. Like I say, I'm brand new here. I'm going to go skip to go do this for a day. So that's one of the things I want to look at.
I'm going to weigh in real quick. So that was the framing of the article we wrote in the Army Communicator, and the purpose behind it when we were submitting it essentially was that if someone was in that situation, they could take this article to their commander, and they could be like, this is what I could learn, this is what I can experience over these 3 days or these 2 days. Here's the training value, please let me do it. And it's just a little bit of backup essentially for you.
Okay, so I got a few things from that. One, we'll talk about getting it in an order. That's on the military side. If you can get people task ordered, that's like a fight for regular Army. But getting a task org like a tasking order where you're tagged to do this. And how do you do that? So you have to join forces. You need to get someone else involved in this. You got to get more bodies. So, and the further you work your way up, the more influence you have. So if you're down at a company level, you can work your way up in a company level to the battalion level, to the brigade level. So where if a brigade pushes out a tasking order and you say, hey, I want to get involved in this, you have a little bit more power if that happens. If you can get up to the division, you're going to be lucky. You're going to be at Campbell. You got a few of you guys around at Campbell. Ask the senior guy to throw some weight around and, go talk to them and be like, hey, I really need this guy for this event. We want to represent 101st. And 10th Mountain got super excited. No one wanted to join us at first, and it wasn't until they found out how well we did that they're like, oh my God, you guys are so great. We should do this. But
Let's have one more thing, the collaboration part of what you said. Collaboration across units that are on the same post is pretty important too, especially with HF, because when you're on the same base and you're like all trying to push whatever power it is, you're going to step on each other. I remember the first QRPX we did at Drum, 1st Brigade, and the 20th ASOS, our Air Force support unit, there we were stepping on each other, and from that point on, we were able to actually build that relationship and include more units. So moving forward, we had 1st Brigade, 2nd Brigade, DeVarty, the Combat Aviation Brigade, and the 20th ASOS. So collaboration not only within your unit, but also the other units on your base is also extremely important, because not only do you not want to step on each other and cause that interference locally, but also you can increase that manning and increase that knowledge, because other branches, other units train differently than your unit. I mean, you go from one base, you go from Drum to Campbell or Drum to Irwin or any other base, the way they train, how they train, the environment that they train in, it's all different. So that knowledge can be spread when you bring more people and collaborate across different units on your base.
Yeah, and I'll say that any staff officer is going to get super excited when you throw the word joint out there. Doesn't matter, you know, if you're like, hey, we're doing a joint thing with the Air Force guys, and it could just be like a bunch of hams from here, but they're like, what? You're working with Air Force and Marines to do that? Oh my goodness, let's get on this, you know. And it's just a few guys in a local club that you know you're doing something with. So I think doing that, kind of reaching out to different organizations, that was the best thing we did. And we could have done a lot more at Drum when it came to joint and reaching across and finding people. Another thing I want to mention in the video is going to be scheduling a display, because Jared brought up a point about like, hey, you know, this is what we can do. Now you need to show off what you can do. You know, if you get it working, if you can get your commander or someone's commander, you wouldn't believe, Cody and I, how many times we talked to a Marine from Bragg, and they call me and they're like, hey, can we make contact? And I'm like, absolutely. And we make contact with them over the radio, and they're like, hold on 1 second, I got to get my commander. And they'll walk and get their commander, and the commander will get back on the radio and be like, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm in Fort Drum, New York. And they're like, I don't understand. And they'll just mind blown. So like, you can talk about all this fancy stuff all you want. And a big thing that we did is when we set up our competition, we made sure people saw us. We set up in our annex building to where when people walk through, they're like, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, we're doing a competition. They're like, oh, okay, tell me a little bit about it. And every commander came through and kind of saw. And some don't care, but others do. Okay. Anything else? Again, weather antenna, coax, which is part of the system, unit collaboration. I know a big elephant in the room is going to be CPA and programming and the plan. Don't know if I want to hit that too hard. Kind of just want to talk about making sure you know and understand your plan and know and understand your radio, because that's going to be very complex. And I don't want to mention too much in a chat like this, but I do think CPA and or maybe not even CPA, we'll just say your programming software and your radio's capabilities will come, be very important. So I won't even put CPA. I'll put software.
I tried to unmute myself a second ago and accidentally turned off my camera.
Software and hardware validations is what I was going to put.
Back on the visibility thing for a second, I don't know how well Node-RED is known in this community specifically, but it's essentially a visual programming studio that's browser-based. It was developed by IBM for the Internet of Things, that has been modified heavily by certain amateur radio operators to do contest dashboards. So not to go all out with it, but one of the things that's very common is to plot all of your contacts on a map as you make those contacts. And it works through N1MM, the logging software, but you can modify it for anything you want. It's all open source. So if you're looking for some visibility and ways to show people who you're talking to and where all of your contacts are, that's a really easy way to do it. If you feel a little bit of tech background, I assume everyone here does.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. And
there's a large groups.io following for it. So if you're on there and you look up Node-RED, you'll find it.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote that down. That'd be really cool to get that in there.
We'll have on it next time.
Say that again.
Should get the Noble Skywave guys on it next time. I think they have a pretty good logging system, but add a visual on a map. Oh, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, and one thing I want from Noble Skywave is we don't get our logs back. So if I don't keep like a duplicate, I don't actually know, everyone that I talked to or how far the longest contact was, which would have been nice.
Yeah.
All right. Like it.
Anything else after that? Software, hardware validation.
So if you're running a multi-radio station, right? Like we call it ham shack, but I mean, we set up inside of a building and then actually used outside antennas last time, QRPX. So if you have a multi-station setup, I mean, knowing where everyone's going to be at and just kind of the layout of your talk, call the talk layout to simplify it. Yeah, how you're gonna do that.
Okay.
That the military radios are really good at receive noise blanking and like kind of being able to keep close radios kind of separated, but like integrating ham radio into military radio and maybe having like band filters and saying, okay, hey, this radio is going to be 20 meters, this one's going to be whatever this band is for Mars has set up for this exercise. So kind of bringing in those filters and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we were looking at RMDR and blocking dynamic range, and the 160s have all of that built in incredibly well. The receiver is not quite as sensitive as most of the amateur receivers in the market, even down to the 7300. But even 5 or 10 kilohertz away with 20 watts or 100 watts, and the antenna having maybe 30 dB of isolations, you're still about a watt into the receiver. It's incredibly good. So for the most part, you don't need the bandpass filters if you're using the 160s.
Yeah.
I haven't done the testing with the 150s.
150s are
We have the 150s.
Yeah, they're both really good. Let's see. But I do think Matt has a good point with at least knowing how you're going to run the show when it comes to what frequencies you're operating on. I think when we planned it and we had all of our antennas set up, we kind of said, hey, you're pointing this direction. I know you're only going to be good at these frequencies. So this will be your daytime frequency. This will be your nighttime frequency on these azimuths. So there's no point in you really operating somewhere else. You're on the NIVIS antenna and you're only going to be doing, 40 meters and under. So that's just a good idea for that talk layout and that planning. I think the last thing I have in my brain is power. If you're running battery power, calculating how many batteries you're going to need, how you're running your show, because it's different than just a 90% receive. You need to know how many batteries you need, and if you're only going with 4 batteries, how you plan on recharging them, anything like that. That's probably a whole discussion we can get into. I think we're all kind of knowledgeable when it comes to power because we've all gone out and played radio away from our shack. So I don't have to beat that one up too much. All right, anything else? I got a good list
I got
going.
one more.
Yeah.
So, looking at the public affairs side of things, once everyone knows where they're going, when they're setting up, when they're starting their competition, they should send up 5 Ws for some kind of press release to your unit's PAOs so that your PAO can maybe come out, take some pictures, post it to your unit's pages, and really get the face of both the club and that you're doing this for your unit, how good it is for actually getting that public face out there. So as soon as you know when you're doing, how you're doing it, where, probably at least a week prior, the 5 Ws put into a press release form, sent out to your PAO, even up to your installations paper would be a very good thing to do, because then they could come out off that press release and take pictures, maybe do some interviews and get some more information and show that, hey, we're getting involved out there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a good one. I added that in with the scheduling and display, but having a PAO is good. Okay, anyone else got any more pressing issues? No? All right, sweet.
Wait, I'm sorry. When usually they publish the SOI for the military competitions like pretty late in the game. I think probably 4 or 5 days prior.
Noble Skywave, yeah, but others generally.
They usually do it quite a bit like timeout, and then they'll put out like fragos like as the time gets closer.
So I would say this. I would say that as soon as you get that SOI, for contacts that you know that you can that are solid, by all means, just check in with them prior. Maybe ask what's going on with them. Maybe just have those guys be on the queue to knock them out pretty early. But those folks that you might have a little bit of trouble with, reach out before and find out what if they're actually going to be set up on day 1, hour 1. A lot of folks they treat the competition as more of like a duty day instead of like a 24-hour operation. So you might not ever be able to get a hold of them. So doing that prior coordination almost all the way down the entire list makes you much more effective.
Yeah, I know that we fully took advantage of that. I know in Noble Skywave, before the competition even started, I made 2G chat channels, 3G chat channels, single sideband chat channels. I know John made the whole chat that we used that everyone from I forget what, I think it was the Mars competition, one of them, but everyone on their app was able to chat with each other. So getting that ahead of time, get everyone into the one spot so they can say like, hey, I'm online, I'm offline, and then printing out the list of all the people and calling each one and saying, what's your operating hours? And we did that. What's your operating hours? Cool. Write it down. What's your operating hours? Cool. And then you don't have to waste time trying to get these people, really get them hooked in and say, hey, it's 12 p.m. You said you're going to be on, and let's try and make that shot. And then you get that one-on-one time to try and make that shot.
This is more of a flag and torch thing, but Noble Skywave uses Slack for their collaborative communication for their operations, but Mars doesn't really do anything. It's really on the units to coordinate between each other. So one thing that I kind of want to put out there for flag and torch is in some way through our website or something like that in the future, we'll have some way for collaborative communication where we can start sending out a link, or even we can make a second Discord where it's strictly about communications during a competition, and then it gets cleared for the next competition, and all that stuff. Not cleared as in members, but cleared as in chats. But either way, however that works, that's something I can brainstorm. But either like that, point is the collaboration between all the units for Mars and stuff like that is not really standardized right now. So that's something we should work on, because another thing is the communication between civilian Mars and military Mars. There's not really anything there unless you really run into someone and they're like, hey, I'm a Mars operator. You never really know. So that's there's not really a map of rosters out there. There is rosters for civilian Mars, but they don't really make that public. So that's something we have to work on, and I think that's something Flag and Torch can definitely pick up on with the resources and the contacts we have.
Yeah, I agree. We've talked about this with them before. Getting a website, getting a chat function, something that we can log into and kind of resource. Maybe not logging. I know Noble Skywave does that, but we do a lot of stuff where we could go out to a field and set up and not have connectivity, so you can't do active logging. But yeah, I think a solution should need to be made. But okay, we'll talk about that more down the road when we start prepping to make this video. But does anyone else have anything? Because we are recording and streaming, so I don't want to make it too long. All right, nothing heard. Good monthly discussion. Remember, next month we're going to go into air frequencies. I got some cool things lined up. tracking some radar and stuff on your phone. So